Hey guys, welcome back to Tequila and Terror. This is episode 10.
Yeah.
Yay!
And it's going to be a pretty good one, I think. We finally have the first serial killer episode this episode, The Butcher of Rostov.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
And mine's one that I've never heard of, so it's great.
Pretty cool.
Yay!
Thanks to everybody in Tennessee. Man, y'all really, stepped up. It's the first place other than our hometown that, has more, all these views. They're pretty crazy.
Listens,
yeah.
Y'all viewing us too, it's fun.
Yeah. And Texas and New York and California, it's really amazing to me.
We like y'all. Thanks.
I like Nashville a lot, and I guess maybe they can pick up that we like Nashville.
We've only been there 20 times in the past year, so.
Yeah, it's pretty much our second home, so.
We're addicted.
Thanks, Nashville.
At least it's not drugs.
Yeah.
Now, this week, I'm actually going to be talking about a hotel in New York.
New York.
Okay. He is excited tonight, y'all. The Shanley Hotel.
What?
The Shanley, not the Stanley.
Oh, okay. I thought you stuttered or something.
Shanley.
Shanley.
It is located in Napanock. I can't say words, so if I'm wrong, please don't hate me. Napanock, New York. And you actually have to be over 16 to stay at the Shanley. And you have to sign a waiver.
Really?
Yeah.
I like that.
Which I thought was pretty cool.
That way there's no babies crying and just enjoy your stay.
That's not why.
Oh, okay.
Because it's hella haunted.
Whoa.
Hashtag hella haunted. So the first hotel built on the site was called the Napanock Hotel, and it was built by a guy named Thomas Rich in 1845. The hotel was sold in 1851 and was then called the Hungerfords, I can't pronounce words again, Hotel. A house close to that hotel caught on fire in 1895, and the building was burnt to the ground. So, literally, dude's neighbor had their house caught on fire and everybody else's house burnt. It sucked. Dude realized, hey, this is my business. Kind of got to do something about this. So he rebuilt the hotel immediately, and it reopened in November of that year. This new hotel was sold and purchased by James Lewis Shanley in 1906. Shanley was an immigrant from Ireland who had become a successful businessman in the States and married a lady named Beatrice. I like her name, Beatrice. Yeah, I knew you would say it like that.
So classy.
It's like one of those old lady names that I love. I love the name Beatrice.
Estelle.
Or like a Golden Girl's name.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Ruby or Rose or whatever. We're weird. So due to their social standing, because, they were super successful in business, the Shanleys were actually friends with people like the Roosevelts.
Oh, wow.
And Eleanor actually frequented the hotel. It is stated that Thomas Edison was even a guest. And over the years, the hotel housed many guests, including the rich and famous, gangsters, and madams. There's even a secret room with hidden passages. Unfortunately, this has now been sealed off, but it's rumored to have once been used for bootlegging during the Prohibition days. Which I thought was super cool.
We haven't had a story yet that hasn't involved prostitutes or booze.
That's what we're into.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that it's called Tequila and Terror.
It's what we do.
We should rename it Tequila, Terror, and Horse.
Listen, ladies of the night.
Yeah.
Sir. Bordellos and booze.
There you go. Copyright. Don't take that name. Yeah.
Hashtag second podcast.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, so the rumors actually hold some value because James Shanley and his business partner John Powers were actually supposed to be seen in court in 1932 after a police raid of the building and the confiscation of illegal, at that time, because of Prohibition, booze. At the time, the Shanley was rumored to have the best amenities for their guests, including a bowling alley, a billiard room, a barber shop, as well as a brothel. The remains of the brothel can actually be seen today at the Shanley. They have a madam's couch that sits on the landing in front of the bedrooms.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I will probably say this again later because I didn't write it at this point in my notes. But it is said that if you touch the couch, you will almost always feel a cold or a hot spot, which is said to be like the ghost that's there.
What I think about's cool about hotels those days, like they're one-stop shops. You get your haircut, you get some booze, you get a hooker.
You got all this stuff. It's good stuff. Unfortunately, as fun as the Shanley sounds, there were actually plenty of tragedies as well.
Oh.
Although Beatrice, James Shanley's wife, was able to bear 3 children, each passed away prior to reaching their first birthday. There are actually claims that Beatrice's sister, Esther, passed away at the hotel as well, although sources vary on the reason. Most state that it was due to influenza, but some state that she passed away in childbirth. Either way, Beatrice and James were given custody of the children after she passed away. In 1911, the hotel's barber had a daughter, Rosie, who fell down a well at a neighboring farm and passed away. She was 4 years old at the time.
Yeah, no, I've never heard a story of somebody actually falling down a well. I just thought that was a Lassie thing.
And she hit her head on the way. It was terrible, and I felt I got really sad when I was reading it.
Wow. She needed a border collie.
Honey.
That could have saved everything.
She needed parents who watched her.
Yeah, just go play in the well.
No, sorry, Bob. In 1915, a 6-year-old was hit by a car across the street from the hotel. There are claims that the child's name is Jonathan and that he is one of the most active spirits in the hotel. It's said that the children's spirits will engage in games with the guests at the hotel. You know how it's like super common for if you go to a place that's haunted and they say that they have kid spirits, for like them to tell you to bring a ball and like the kid will roll the ball back and forth to you. Mm-hmm. That's something that happens here.
Oh, that looks pretty cool. I wish that could happen somewhere.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go right now.
Okay.
Let's take all the balls.
Bye, this episode's over. Yeah.
All the balls.
Yeah.
Just kidding. It is said that over the years, multiple murders took place at the hotel and many individuals came up missing, but these were not appropriately documented, so none of these are actually like legit claims. They're just rumors. On August 26th of 1937, James Shanley had a heart attack and passed away. His wife Beatrice sold the hotel to a man named Al Hazen, who, strangely enough, had the same date of birth as James, although he was born a different year. And the new owner, Al, also passed away on August 26th, years later, which is hella creepy because it's the same exact day that he died.
Yeah, that is
they
pretty
had
odd.
The same date of birth and date of death, just different years. I think that's interesting, but also creepy.
Kind of makes you wonder if they're connected in some parallel universe or something.
Yeah. It's stated that James still lingers at the hotel, and guests have even reported hearing him whistling. Guests have also stated that a man that fits Mr. Shanley's description has also been seen wandering around the property. And there are claims that a woman, believed to be Beatrice, can be heard crying, which they assume to be her crying and mourning the loss of her 3 children and her sister.
That's sad.
The Shanley Hotel was most recently purchased in 2015 by Sal Nicosia. I'm going to assume that's how you say his name. Literally wrote, "How do you say this?"
I've got no clue.
Sal Nicosia, we're going to call him that, who did not know that the hotel was haunted until after the time of purchase.
Whoops.
Dude literally bought this hotel that's hella haunted and had no idea. But he made the best of it. Seems like a great guy. He restored the hotel, trying to preserve as much of the original as possible. He left details such as the bullet holes that were in quote-unquote Oscar and Grover's room. And he enjoyed that Mr. Shanley's ghost made his presence known around the hotel and loved to talk about how his cat did not like certain parts of the hotel and would avoid them.
Huh.
The quote-unquote ghost cat is stated to be well loved by the ghosts of the children at the hotel. Sal ran the hotel until his death in July of 2016.
Gosh, it seems like a death sentence on this hotel.
Kind of. And now his fiance and son run the Shanley, even offering ghost tours, which I thought was cool. So here's some more about some ghosts. A woman in Victorian-style dress has been seen on the property with no explanation as to who she might be or why she might be there. Guests have claimed to experience smelling perfume, burning pipe tobacco, and even food randomly and without explanation. Some believe that the smell of food has come from the ghost of a former cook named Emma, and they believe that the tobacco scent has come from the former owner James, because he chewed tobacco. They also believed that the smell of perfume was from James's wife, because she always wore very floral scents. But again, and it's kind of common of people in those times.
I like all the ghost perfume smells. I think that's cool.
Yeah. I mean,
Ghost by Elizabeth Taylor.
Ghosts by Tequila and Terror.
Yeah.
Close enough. Oh, some have experienced the laughing of children, voices, piano music, footsteps in the halls and up the stairs, cold and hot spots, especially on the couch near the bedrooms that we discussed earlier. Rocking chairs have been seen rocking on their own. People have heard clocks chime when it was not time for them to. They see shadows and apparitions.
Apparitions.
And experience the feeling of being watched, which is really creepy, and I hate that one the most. Like, I can deal with seeing, like, shadowy figures, but I don't want to feel like I'm being watched, y'all. It's weird. I found a few rules that the Shanley has for their guests, which include a few interesting ones. The Shanley has a rule that no liquor is allowed on the site. You can't bring your own alcohol to drink in the rooms. They say that drinking and ghost hunting is not something that pairs well together.
I've heard that at other places. At the Crescent, they told us that spirits and spirits don't mix.
Really? Because they let us drink at the Crescent.
Yeah, but on the first tour we went on there, the guide said spirits and spirits don't mix. So the first thing we done is got a bunch of booze and got drunk in the room.
Of course you did.
And nothing happened.
Except for that one weird clip. Anyways.
Yeah, that was a different time.
We'll discuss that later. Yeah. So no alcohol. They do not allow you to bring Ouija boards.
Really?
Not allowed. Because they don't want you opening up for any other spirits that are unwanted to come in. Fun fact, according to one website, the Shanley actually sells 12 different scented candles with scents inspired by the ghosts that are haunting the hotel. So spirit inspired scents.
Spirit smells.
So I'm guessing they have, like, I couldn't find it. I didn't do a deep dive because, you know, time constraints, and I probably would buy every one of those freaking candles because I'm obsessed. But I'm assuming that, like, James would be the pipe tobacco and, like, his wife Beatrice would be the floral scent and, you know, so on and so forth. But I thought that was pretty cool. We're going to have to go one day.
Yeah, I've never been to New York and I want to go, so.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, we have to go experience the great Northeast.
It's great.
I bet it's great. It looks awesome. Okay, this is the Butcher of Rostov. He's one of the world's, like, most notorious serial killers. And it's a pretty crazy little ride he takes us on here.
Retro.
Yeah. He goes by a bunch of names. The Butcher of Rostov is the most common. Also the Red Ripper or the Rostov Ripper. His actual name is Andre Chikatilo. We're going to call him Andre.
Okay, Andre.
Or the Butcher.
The Butcher.
There we go. We're
I'm
going to go with the Butcher.
The Butcher.
The Butcher was born in 1936 in the Ukraine, then part of the Soviet Union under Stalin's rule. So if you don't know about being under Stalin's rule, that could be a whole 5 episodes by itself as everything Stalin did, like destroyed the country, famines, just horrible to the people.
Everything was awful.
The butcher lived with his parents in a one-room hut on a small farm. They weren't paid for their farm work, but were permitted to grow what they could eat.
I mean, at least they didn't, like, die from not having anything to eat, but still, that sucks.
Yeah. Well, there was a famine, so starvation was a worry for the whole family and the country. His mother frightened him by telling him that his older brother had been kidnapped and eaten by hungry neighbors to keep him close to the house.
What?
Yeah. She also beat him for his frequent bedwetting. So if you ever really hear about the triad of evil from serial killers, that is one of the main deals, is the bedwetting. During the war, his father was drafted into the army, and he eventually became a POW. That labeled him a traitor. So that affected the whole family when that happened, because if you were looked at as a traitor at that time, I mean, it kind of made you a disgrace.
Dang.
And during the German occupation of the Ukraine, his mother was raped by a German soldier and became pregnant. She later gave birth to a daughter named Tatiana. Some say that the butcher witnessed that rape.
Oh my God, poor baby.
The soldiers then burned the hut down while the family watched. So that's another one of the little triads of evil, is arson. People that have an interest in arson, or so that from an early age could have really set him back. The butcher was a good student and loved reading. He was a thin and shy kid, but everybody was going to be thin. There was a famine in the country.
I mean, yeah, if you're not eating, you're gonna be tiny.
He was bullied at school because his family had been labeled as a disgrace because his father was a traitor. His mother continued beating and berating him and his sister for the smallest things, so he had a pretty awful childhood.
Yeah.
His teenage years were a little better, but his mom was still a bitch. He was a model student and was the editor of the school paper at 14. As a teen, the butcher was socially awkward and shy around women. So he went on for a few years, and at 17, they said that's when he committed his first known crime. He jumped an 11-year-old girl that was a friend of his sister, wrestled her to the ground, and ejaculated on her while she struggled in his grip.
Holy crap.
He was never prosecuted for this, but all the researchers say that this crime is said to be the moment in his life where he first turned to evil, where he felt sexual gratification due to the girl struggling in his grips. So,
oh my God.
That was the point where he realized that, hey, I get off on this.
And obviously, if he had been prosecuted for this, like if he actually got in trouble for it,
could have changed everything.
Yeah. Oh my God.
From this point on, he had a lot of sexual frustration and impotence because he could not seem to get aroused unless violence was involved.
Jesus.
Yeah. When he graduated, he applied for the Moscow State University and failed to get in due to low test scores. After his rejection, he moved to the city and worked as a general laborer. He started correspondence classes at a vocational school and studied communications. He had a couple relationships during his time, but they ended due to his impotence. So, I mean, I guess it was an anti-bondage type deal, or maybe that could have worked. I don't know.
I mean, I don't think the BDSM was as popular in that time.
That could have, yeah.
What year was this?
Oh, back during the war, so.
Okay, so a long time ago. Yeah. That wasn't...
After the war,
like, that was weird and taboo then.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still weird and taboo to people, but, like, it's been... not necessarily modernized, but it's been like popularized by like
it's been cleaned, and
stuff like that. Yeah.
Cleansed a little. The butcher worked for 2 years before he was drafted into the Soviet military. He worked with border guards in a communication group and served for 3 years in the military before returning to his parents' village. At the village, he met a girl he had a relationship with. She tried to help him with his impotence problems by asking her friends what she could do about his smaller trouble.
He was trying to avoid the word boner, and it
just keeps coming out.
I'm sorry. His boner problem.
I wrote that in here.
Weird Did you write down boner?
Yeah, I wrote out boner trouble. Before long, the whole village knew about his boner problem because of the women gossiping. He was so ashamed, he tried to hang himself.
Jesus.
And his mother found him hanging and cut him down. So I guess she loved him enough to cut him down from hanging.
Unless she was just like, you're an embarrassment to me.
Yeah.
Get down.
Pull your pants up and get out. I just assume that that's what he was doing, but...
You're ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
After this suicide attempt, he decided to get away from people and move to the city with his sister. They shared an apartment there. His sister later introduced the butcher to one of her friends named Felicia.
Felicia?
Yeah, it's like Russian Keisha. They quickly got married. The sex life was non-existent, but they agreed to have a baby and got her pregnant by shoving semen into her vagina with his fingers. Yeah, that shit actually worked.
Okay.
And they had a daughter named Lamidia, and 4 years later had a son named Yuri. The butcher enrolled at a correspondence school at the Rostov University studying literature. He obtained a degree in 1970. He got a job managing a regional sports center and remained in a position for a year before beginning a career as a literature teacher at a boarding school. So, this guy getting a job as a teacher at a boarding school is going to be some problems.
It's a terrible idea. Nobody should let him around children ever.
But he's lived a pretty normal life from the point of his suicide on.
Attempt.
Yeah. He's had a family, he's worked some jobs, so he probably seems pretty normal at this point. And he's got these kids.
They always hide it so well.
Yeah, like BTK. I mean, he's got he appears on the outside to have his crap together.
Yeah. But then they realize, oh, it's not as it seems.
Yeah. In May 1973, he committed sexual assault on one of his pupils. In this incident, he swam towards a 15-year-old girl and groped her breasts and genitals, ejaculating as the girl struggled against his grasp.
Man.
Months later, he sexually assaulted another girl who he had locked in a classroom. He was not disciplined for either of these incidences. Fellow teachers observed him fondling himself in the presence of students.
And did nothing?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Who?
These guys constantly get away with this stuff. It blows my mind.
Ugh.
One of his duties at school was to ensure the students who boarded at the school were present in the dormitories in the evenings. On several occasions, he is known to have entered the girls' dormitory in hopes of seeing them undressed. Eventually, the school gave him the option to resign or be fired after complaints surfaced about him. He was not punished any farther. They just fired him.
So, no permanent record thing, no, hey, we're going to tell any future bosses that might be inquiring about you teaching at their schools, just...
Oh, you're gone.
Good to go.
Yep. He left that job and found another one as a teacher, but that ended shortly after several complaints of child molestation there, too.
So, he's just a phenomenal human. Best teacher ever.
I wonder what he told his wife while he was losing all these jobs.
He probably swung it hey, I wasn't happy, so I left, or just not telling her at all.
It's kind of odd. You get fired from all these schools, and I don't know how big this town was, but you think that would make some noise.
Yeah.
After he got fired from the school, he began a job as a supply clerk at a factory based in Rostov. They produced construction materials, and the job required him to travel across much of the Soviet Union to physically source raw materials that they needed at the factory.
Huh.
So this let him travel around the country and stalk women and boys.
People.
Yeah, people
humans.
in general. Yeah.
Good Lord.
So his first murder is believed to be in 1978 in September. It was in a coal mining town near Rostov, where he commuted for his job. He lured a 9-year-old girl named Yelena to an old house which he had purchased. He attempted to rape her, but failed to achieve an erection, When the girl struggled, he choked her and stabbed her 3 times in the abdomen. He ejaculated on the child. Then he threw her body into a nearby river. It was found 2 days later.
Oh, honey.
All these accounts here are from his confession. He was kind of like a BTK in a sense that he gave the police such a detailed confession later that all these accounts of these crimes I have here came straight from him. So
Jesus.
So he had like a picture-perfect memory of all this stuff.
Man.
But that police, nobody knows that at this point. This is numerous pieces of evidence linked him to her murder. Spots of blood had been found in the snow near his house. Neighbors had noted that he had been present in the house, and her bag had been found on the opposite side of the bank of the river from his house. Police gave a detailed description of a man that closely resembled him. Despite all this, a 25-year-old man named Alexander, who as a teenager had served a prison sentence for rape and murder, was arrested for the crime. Which would make sense. I mean, that guy was a piece of crap too, so they're going to be looking through the town and they found this guy, somebody easy to pin it on.
I mean, I get that, but still, like, don't just pin it on somebody. Find the actual person.
Yeah.
Keep this from happening again.
A search of Alexander's house revealed spots of blood on his wife's jumper. The blood type was determined to match Yelena and his wife. Alexander had a watertight alibi for the afternoon. He had been at home with his wife and friends for the entire day, and even a couple of other neighbors were able to verify this. The police threatened the neighbors and his wife, saying they would charge her with an accomplice if she didn't write a new statement. So they did. They changed their statement and said he didn't return till that evening, so police arrested him for murder, and he was tried and later executed for this girl's murder.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So dude could have been like trying to get his life back on track, having like a semi-normal life after making mistakes previously, and now he's just dead because of someone else.
Yeah.
Lord have mercy.
They say that after this murder that he was only able to achieve an orgasm through stabbing and slashing women and children. He said that he later claimed that the urge to relive the experience had overwhelmed him. So,
oh God.
So once he got that high and finally had that release, he just kept searching for it again like a drug almost.
Yeah.
He said at first he struggled to resist these urges. In September of 1981, he encountered a 17-year-old boarding school girl named Larissa standing at a bus stop. He lured that girl to a forest near the river, saying that they'd drink some vodka and relax. When they reached a secluded area, he threw the girl to the ground before tearing off her clothes and attempting to rape her. She fought back. He forced mud inside her mouth and pretty much suffocated her with mud while he beat her.
Oh, honey.
He had no knife, so he mutilated her body with his teeth and a stick on the ground.
Oh.
He tore one nipple from her body with his teeth before covering her body with leaves and branches and left. So 9 months later, he encountered another 13-year-old girl walking from the bus station. They were both going on the same path, and as soon as they got out of the view of the people, he pushed her into the bushes. He dragged her into the woods, tore off her dress, and killed her by stabbing and slashing her to death.
These poor girls.
When her body was found, the medical examiner discovered the evidence of 22 knife wounds inflicted to the head, neck, chest, and pelvic region.
Oh.
Further wounds found on the skull suggested that the killer had attacked her from behind with a handle and the blade of the knife first. In addition to several knife marks were discovered upon her eyes. They say that he killed these girls in a way to make their death as long as possible. Like he would stab them in areas to cause pain, but not to cause death.
Oh, these
so
babies.
He was really getting off on torturing these kids.
He's an awful, awful human being.
Yeah.
God bless.
After that murder, he no longer attempted to resist these homicidal urges. He established a pattern of approaching children and runaways of both sexes at bus stations, and he would lure these victims to secluded areas using a variety of ruses, usually formed in an initial conversation with the victim, such as promising them assistance, show them a shortcut, a chance to view a rare stamp, or films. He'd even offer them candy, so that's taking candy from a stranger serious.
Oh my God.
He would usually overpower the victims once they were alone, tying their hands behind their back and usually stuffing their mud into their mouth.
Oh my God.
He would then kill them by stabbing, slashing, and usually disemboweling the victims.
Whew.
Some victims, in addition to receiving knife wounds, were also strangled or battered. After the killing, he would usually make efforts to conceal the body before leaving the crime scene. Many of the victims had evidence of mutilation to the eye sockets. He targeted kids and adult females usually. He didn't really go after many male men.
Melman?
Yeah. It'd usually be young kids or women.
So
no postal workers. Yeah.
Mail carriers who were female?
Yeah. When he went after these women, he would look for prostitutes or homeless women, and he would lure them into the areas, promising them alcohol or money. He would attempt usually to have sex with them, but he wouldn't get an erection till violence was involved. So he would start a fight with them pretty much, and would slash them to death and kill them.
Jesus.
There's tons of murders that he did, but just list some of the notable ones here. Because, after a while, you just get sick of hearing it.
Yeah.
He just killed so many people so fast. On December 11th, 1982, he encountered a 10-year-old girl named Olga.
Olga?
Yeah, she was riding a bus home, and he met her at the bus stop and persuaded her to go home with him. She was last seen getting off the bus with him, a fellow passenger reported. He lured her to a cornfield on the outskirts of town and killed her. It said the girl was stabbed more than 50 times around the head and body. He ripped her chest open, cut her bowels out, removed her uterus, and ate a piece of her uterus.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Who does that?
It's crazy. It's odd to me that he disembowels so many people, too.
Oh. I can't.
By January of that year, he had killed 4 more people. So just from December to January, he killed 5 people.
That is absolutely nuts.
A Moscow police team, headed by a Major Makarov, was sent to Rostov to direct the investigation, which gradually became known as Operation Forest Path, which is a pretty famous investigation. It started out with a team of 10 investigators and a forensic analyst. The following month, Olga's body was found. Investigators were sent to the crime scene and examined the knife wounds on the child and her eye sockets. So they knew by that point there was a few bodies found, and they kind of thought they were connected, but they couldn't really connect them yet. Because most of them were found in so many different stages of decomposition, It was hard to. He didn't kill again until June. Then he murdered a 15-year-old Armenian girl named Laura. Then, by September, he'd killed 5 more.
Jesus.
So now, he's killed all these other girls, and the police know that the similarities and the pattern of the wounds, they knew that they had to have a serial killer.
Yeah.
But that was still in a time where serial killer wasn't really a term that was just tossed around, so they didn't want to believe it.
Yeah.
But these investigators were good, so they knew what was going on. Due to the savagery of the murders and the precision of the cuts, the police thought that it had been conducted by a group harvesting organs or a satanic cult, or maybe even a mentally ill individual.
I mean, they're not wrong.
Yeah.
He's definitely not sane.
Much of the police effort concentrated on the theory that the killer must be mentally ill or a pedophile. Any individual who had spent time in a psychiatric ward or been convicted of pedophilia were checked and logged into a card filing system. So didn't really have computers at this time. So they were digging through tons and tons of records, researching, and anybody who they thought might be a suspect, they would organize in a card catalog system, kind of like you used to see at libraries.
Yeah.
So they were keeping massive records for this.
That's insane.
Yeah, the Russian
awesome.
military here was awesome in this
They
case.
were bomb on it.
Registered sex offenders were also investigated, and if their alibi was corroborated, yeah, I cannot talk.
Corroborated.
People. They were eliminated from the investigation.
If their alibi was valid.
Yeah. Beginning in September, they had several people confessing to the crimes. Just because for some reason people do that crap when there's murders.
That is ridiculous to me.
And they actually arrested some and started charging some people with the crime. Because they
didn't have any other...
Yeah, so it seemed like, well, that's
any evidence against it.
But the police had like a pretty massive dragnet. And as just a result of the investigation so far, more than 1,000 unrelated crimes, 95 murders, 140 aggravated assaults, and 245 rapes were solved.
Jesus, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's awesome that they figured out that many things just because this one dude is a terrible human being.
Yeah, and they still don't know who he is. They were just investigating all these people and found all this other crime.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Police obtained confessions from the suspects, but bodies continued to be discovered.
Of course, because he killed so many people.
Yeah. This proved that the suspects who had confessed could not be the killer. And I guess as a way to prove that, another disemboweled body of a prostitute was found just a few days later.
Good Lord.
Then 2 months later, he killed a 14-year-old schoolboy named Sergei. He was lured off a train and murdered at a rail station. He was emasculated, which means they removed his testicles and possibly penis, and suffered over 90 knife wounds.
Jesus.
And then he was also disemboweled. On March 24th, he killed a 10-year-old boy named Dmitri. He lured him away from a stamp kiosk. They said that several witnesses gave a description of the man. But you see a lot of these serial killers are like chameleons. They can blend in. They're really good at just changing little things about them to blend in with the crowds. Dimitri's body was found 3 days later. They found a killer's footprint. They found semen and saliva samples on the victim's clothes. On May 25th, he killed a woman and her 10-year-old daughter.
Oh.
So this is just every month, sometimes twice a month, he's killing people.
Well, I'm sure it's becoming more rapid and more frequent because he realizes he's not getting caught for this.
Yeah.
And he can't control the urges anymore. So now he's just doing it whenever he feels like it, whenever he needs that urge met.
Yeah, you hear a lot of these guys talk about that, like it's a dark beast or a dark passenger inside them, and they have to feed this urge.
You gotta feed the demon.
By the end of July, he had killed 3 more young women, and a 13-year-old boy.
Oh my God.
In the summer, he was fired from his work as a supply clerk for theft of property. He had been asked to resign, but refused to do so, and he denied all the charges. He found another job as a supply clerk in Rostov.
Of course he denied all the charges, because dude had gotten cocky at this point. He was getting away with literal murder. Of course he thinks he should get away with stealing stuff, too.
To me, this is as big of a deal and a triad as anything. These guys constantly commit crimes and get away with it.
Crimes, yeah.
And that happens to all of them. It's just...
yeah, or they get reduced sentences for stuff that they shouldn't, or... yeah.
The worst guys catch the best breaks.
Yeah.
But after he got that job... Pretty much he got that job on August 1st, and on August 2nd, he killed a 16-year-old girl.
Holy crap.
Then on August 7th, he killed a 17-year-old girl on the banks of the river. They found her. She had 39 stab wounds to her body, and he had mutilated and disemboweled her too.
Oh my God.
They said that this is the first victim they found that they had realized he killed her in a way that she wouldn't immediately die from the wounds. They said that they could tell by the pattern of wounds that she was tortured and slowly pretty much bled out.
Oh, poor girl.
Because he wanted them to struggle as long as possible so he could pretty much get off as long as he could.
Yeah.
Her body was found with her lips cut off and they were placed inside her mouth.
Oh, no.
After the murder, the butcher flew to Uzbekistan on a business trip. Like, pretty much kill somebody in the morning at a train station, flies to Uzbekistan, and then killed 2 women on that trip. He got back, and within 2 weeks, he had killed an 11-year-old boy named Alexandra. They found him on the bank of the same river, strangled and castrated with his eyes gouged out.
Oh, no.
So this river is just full of bodies by this point. He's just bringing these kids to this river, killing them, disemboweling them, cutting their balls off.
Why are they not watching, like, patrolling the freaking river?
Well, I'm going to get to that point in a second where the Russians really get fed up with him. Then on September, which was just, I mean, all these murders happened within a month. So that was all in August. Now we're in September. He was observed by 2 undercover detectives attempting to talk to women at a bus station. The detectives followed him around through the city as he tried to make contact with other women. And said as he was doing that, he was rubbing his genitals on women and playing with himself in public places.
Oh, my God.
So,
what a skeezy fella.
Yeah. He was arrested and held. A search of his belongings revealed a knife with an 8-inch blade, several lengths of rope, a jar of Vaseline. This was his kill kit.
Of course.
He was under investigation for the theft that he got fired for. So that gave the investigators the right to hold him for a time to question him. He matched the physical description of the man that killed Dmitri, so they took his blood. His blood type came back type A. Right. Back then, we didn't really have all the sophisticated DNA tests, so they knew that some of the victims, they found blood there that was typed AB. So his type was A, so that he was filed into the card system, but not immediately thought of as a suspect because of the difference in blood type.
Yeah.
So they discounted him as a killer. He was released on that charge, but found guilty of theft of property and sentenced to a year in prison. He got out after only 3 months.
Of course he did. Because again, the bad people get reduced sentences for some stupid reason.
Yeah. He got out of jail in December, got a new job at a factory, and did not kill again until August of 85 while he was on a business trip. He killed an 18-year-old girl named Natalia at a railroad station where he pretty much did the same MO. He lured her into the woods, stabbed her, and strangled her. And 4 weeks later, he killed another girl with the same type of wounds. And the police realized at this point that these were all linked to the same killer again. So the head of the Russian Public Prosecutor's Office formally linked 23 of the murders into one case and dropped all charges against anyone that had previously been charged or admitted to any of the other crimes. So they realized that it was just people trying to get attention, I guess.
Yeah.
A special prosecutor was appointed to supervise the investigation, which by this stage had expanded to 45 detectives assigned to work exclusively on this manhunt. So they had 45 detectives, a special prosecutor, and a forensic analyst all on this one case.
Holy crap. I mean, it's one case, but it's so many deaths.
Yeah. The police know that these murders are linked, so they start reinvestigating all of them, looking for any clues. They start patrolling sex offenders. They tell them, they search the railway stations. They have plainclothes officers at the stations to use as bait to see if anyone tries to come up on them.
Yeah.
Police also took the step of consulting a psychiatrist for the first time in the Soviet Union. They gave him all the crime scene reports and medical examiner's reports to make a psychological profile of the murderer. So that's the first time in the Soviet Union they used a psychological profile on somebody.
Huh.
The profiler, he came back with a 65-page report on the killer. They said it was somebody aged between 45 and 50 who had a painful childhood, who was incapable of flirting or courting a woman. They said he was of average intelligence, likely to be married and have fathered children, but was also a sadist who suffered from impotence. They said that the only way they thought he could get aroused was by seeing victims suffer. So this guy was good. The murders, they said, were an analog to the sexual intercourse that he was incapable of performing. They said his knife became a substitute for his penis, which failed to function normally.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's wild. Mm-hmm. Because many of the killings had occurred on weekdays near mass transit hubs across the country, they said that they figured the killer's work required him to travel. Then they started checking the days that all the murders happened on with the train schedules, and they pretty much came up with a schedule of the killings, and they tied that to production schedules of local factories. So these guys were awesome.
Yeah, they were smart.
But the butcher followed the investigation carefully, because we see this. They like to toy with the media. They like to follow the crimes. They want to be acknowledged for the crimes. So he was constantly watching this and reading the newspaper reports for details about the manhunt and the killer. He kept all of his urges under control for about a year, and no more victims were found. So I guess the heat got on him and he settled down for a little bit, which I've seen that happen before with people like BTK and a lot of them, really. And they all will kind of cool off for a while. But August 18th, 1986, they found a victim buried on the grounds of a farm. They said the wounds that she had linked her to the manhunt. She was an 18-year-old secretary who had been slit open from neck to genitalia with one breast removed and had her eyes cut out.
Oh.
So, they find another body with eyes cut out. They're going to.
Yeah.
This is our second story in a row with eyes.
Yeah, it's weird and I don't like it.
Yeah, it's odd. I started this story before I even knew who the eyeball killer was. And this story I also found a pretty interesting reason about why he cut the eyes out. I'll tell you in a little bit, too.
Okay. Reminds me of Coraline. I know you probably haven't seen it, but in Coraline, she goes to her quote-unquote other family, which is like the demonic, whatever, like creepy thing trying to keep her forever, and they put buttons over their eyes, and they try to sew buttons over her eyes, and I freaked out even though it's a kid's movie.
That's pretty creepy.
Yeah.
For a kid's movie.
Yeah. I'm not letting the girls watch it. I'm terrified. I love it, but I hate it. I don't do eyeballs, y'all.
No, it's weird.
I don't do it.
The investigators began thinking, because of the way he tried to bury the body this time, there may have been more bodies, and they just didn't find them in that time period.
Holy crap.
Like, he was probably killing other girls during that time, but the only one they found was in August. So he had
disposing of them better to make sure that he didn't get caught.
So he was probably killing people for 7 months there that they don't know about.
Yeah.
By autumn of 86, investigators theorized that the unknown killer may have moved to another part of the Soviet Union to continue there, or maybe he had even died. The Rostov police compiled bulletins and sent them out to all of the Soviet Union. They described the patterns of the wounds that the killer inflicted and asked for feedback from any police force who had discovered murder victims matching those wounds. So that they thought he was gone. They thought he's somewhere else. Like, if you know anything,
keep this from happening in another part, because he's obviously not here, but he's not gonna stop.
Yeah, but nothing came back from any other police force.
Huh.
So in 1987, before they knew anything, he had already killed 3 more women.
Holy crap.
Then he killed some more women on a business trip. And then in 1988, he killed 3 more bodies and a woman and 2 boys.
Oh, my God.
So it's just constant stream of dead bodies turning up. He later lured a woman off a train, bound her hands behind her back, and stuffed her mouth with dirt. He cut her nose from her face.
Oh.
Yeah. and inflicted numerous knife wounds to her neck, then bludgeoned her to death with a slab of concrete.
Oh, poor girl.
This is the first body after his little break that they were 100% able to identify as his killing again.
Yeah.
So the investigation ramped back up. Then in May of that year, they found a 9-year-old boy who was murdered, emasculated, and had at least 30 knife wounds.
Oh my God.
Then between May and August, he killed 4 more people.
Jesus.
And all these crimes are not just stabbing and go crimes. All these crimes are brutal. Every one of these crimes, he stabbed these people 30 to 40 times. He would remove the testicles from the males and cut out the uterus and guts from the women. I mean, it's crazy. With the resurfacing of him, they connected everything to the manhunt again, and they realized that the bodies were still being found close to railway stations. The investigators pretty much assigned more plainclothes officers to the stations and started filming and photographing passengers on the trains throughout Rostov. Several trains were also fitted with hidden cameras with intentions of filming or photographing a victim in the company of the murderer.
That's really smart, though.
Yeah.
They needed to be doing that the whole time.
Which he didn't kill anybody else till January of the next year, or that they know of anyway.
Yeah.
Because the true number that he killed, we don't really know. At least
Just
50.
So many. Yeah.
So yeah. But he killed an 11-year-old boy, same MO. 7 weeks later, his body was found, and the investigators had a meeting with the press, because at this point the press was going crazy that the manhunt had made national attention, because in the past the Soviet news media was repressed. They weren't free press. They couldn't just report on anything, and now it was open, and there was this killer cutting people up and killing kids. So the public was going crazy about it.
Yeah.
Like, they were tired of this guy going around killing their kids and young women. But it didn't really slow him down. He had killed 3 more kids and a 31-year-old woman by August of that year.
Oh my God.
All similar wounds, all matched his MO. The discovery of more victims sparked a massive police operation. Like, they just kept getting huge. They ended up having thousands of police officers on this case.
Holy crap.
And the military, the KGB, everybody. The biggest police investigation in Russian history, I guess.
That is insane.
Because several of the victims had been found at the rail stations going through Rostov, police suggested a plan to saturate all larger stations in Rostov with an obvious uniformed police presence, which the killer could not fail to notice. The intention was to discourage him from attempting to strike at any of these locations and make it where he would have to go to smaller locations where the undercover agents would be, and maybe they would catch him. The plan was approved, and both the uniform and undercover officers were instructed to question any adult male in the company of a young woman or child, get his name and passport number. Police deployed over 360 men to these stations in Rostov, but only undercover officers were posted at the 3 smallest stations on the route. So, of course, he gets a 16-year-old boy and kills him at one of the smaller stations.
Of course.
The body was immediately linked to the murder. He'd been stabbed 27 times, castrated, had the tip of his tongue cut off, and his left eye stabbed out.
Oh my God.
At another small station, he also killed another 16-year-old boy and put him in a nearby forest. They said that boy had been stabbed over 40 times. So, on November 6, 1990, he killed and mutilated a 22-year-old woman named Savania near a train station. He was returning to the railway when he was observed by an undercover officer named Igor, who saw him approach a water fountain, wash his hands and face. He said that he noted that the butcher had grass on his elbows and soil stains on his knees, and he had a small red smear on his cheek, and what appeared to be a severe wound on his fingers. He looked suspicious. Said the only people that would be at this station this time of year would be people that were gathering wild mushrooms. Apparently that's a popular pastime in Russia. They said that he was not dressed like a typical forest scavenger. He was wearing formal attire and had a nylon sports bag which was unsuitable for carrying mushrooms. So Igor stopped him and checked his papers, but he had no formal reason to arrest him. So Igor is doing an awesome job. I just love that name, Igor. Such a good, strong Russian name.
Oh my God, of course you do.
When Igor returned to the office, he filed routine paperwork containing the name of the person he stopped at the station and talked about the possible blood smear. So, a little while later, her body was found, and they end up linking that to the manhunt. Police summoned Igor to the station and examined all the reports of the men stopped that week. Mm-hmm. So they saw that the butcher's name was in his reports, and he was familiar to the officers in the case because he had been questioned earlier. So they now had a suspect.
Yeah, and they had a reason to actually link him directly.
Yeah. After checking with his employers, they put him into various towns and cities at the time of the crimes. They questioned his former colleagues and his teaching jobs and revealed that he had been forced to resign from his teaching positions due to the complaints of his sexual assaults.
Oh my God.
Police placed him under surveillance and saw him going around trains and buses, approaching lone women, engaging in them in conversation, and just being a creep in general.
Yeah. Like he did.
And after 6 days of surveillance, police arrested him at a local park after he exited a cafe. When he was first arrested, he claimed that he didn't have anything to do with the murders.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
Because who's just going to claim that outright? I mean, other than those crazy people who wanted attention for things that they didn't do.
When they were searching him, they noticed that a piece of his finger had been bitten off. They said it was a human bite wound to one of his fingers from one of his last victims, and it was bit pretty much all the way off.
Holy crap.
So that last girl really fought.
Yeah. Or guy. He had some guys there at the end, too.
Yeah. A search of his belongings revealed he had been in possession of a folding knife and 2 pieces of rope. Some of his blood was taken, and he was placed inside the KGB headquarters in Rostov. So, they're not screwing around. The KGB is not anybody I'd ever want to mess with. And if you happen to be listening to KGB, you're awesome people. Thanks.
Intense. Mm-hmm. Like camping.
Yeah. They put a police informant in a cell with him.
Well, of course, because dude's going to talk, right?
Yeah.
They always do.
And instructed him to engage the butcher in conversation and get any information out of him they could. The next day, police began interrogating him. The police tried to play good cop on him and tried to go at him in a way to make him believe that he was just a sick guy needing medical help. They hoped that would give him hopes of getting off by reason of insanity. Mm-hmm. Police knew they only had 10 days to legally hold him before charging or releasing him. But due to the amount of physical and circumstantial evidence, the investigators pretty much knew they had who they'd been looking for.
Well, yeah.
I mean, they had this guy with his finger bitten off. He had a knife. He had a rope.
He left town and came back home on dates that made sense with the murders.
Yeah, they already had a schedule made. All they had to do is, fill it in with where he works. So
yeah.
Throughout the question, he repeatedly denied that he had committed the murders, although he did confess to molesting kids at school. The KGB used some pretty rough interrogation tactics that caused him to become defensive, and he was smart enough to figure out that the dude in the cell was a narc.
Well, of course.
So they were starting to run out of time, and they were still trying to get a confession out of him. So they brought in a psychologist that had this 65-page report that he made it. Mm. And he starts reading it to the butcher. They said within 2 hours of reading it, the butcher burst into tears and confessed that he was guilty of all the crimes that he'd been arrested.
Holy crap!
So I guess it just, hearing it from somebody else.
Like, hearing who you are as a person and all of your flaws, basically, from another person, probably will wear you down.
I bet that would be rough.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy made a 65...
I don't even like it when you tell me that I'm, like, saying something wrong.
But you're pretty.
Thanks. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, I take that hard. So, of course, he's not going to enjoy that. I don't care how tough he is.
Yeah, he sat there for 2 hours while this guy ripping into his ass about everything in his life.
That sounded gross.
Yeah.
We've had enough grossness tonight, Wes.
But after the butcher started crying, he started confessing, and he even wrote handwritten notes talking about the crimes, which is where most of the earlier story came from.
Holy crap.
Said that T explained all the crimes in pretty much amazing detail. Each murder, he would write a list out, give all the known facts. They said he could even draw rough sketches. He could draw rough sketches of the crime scenes, indicating the position of the victim's body and landmarks at the scene.
Words are hard.
Words are hard.
It's okay.
Pretty much.
I can't even imagine, like, having that kind of memory, though. Like, all joking aside, I can't even remember what I had for breakfast today.
Yeah.
Like, legitimately. I know people say that. I literally can't.
It's crazy.
ADHD's fun, though.
I don't understand. I mean, it seems like such a waste of a good mind if you can remember all that.
But yet not test well enough to
get
into school. Yeah. It's so weird.
Yeah, it's odd. He pretty much just constantly told the detectives about stories about how he would kill people. He said that in describing his victims, with the male victims, he would usually bind the victims and proceed to kill them. He would typically inflict multiple wounds to the chest. At first, shallow wounds before inflicting deep wounds. So they kind of knew that he was torturing them. He would inflict small, shallow wounds just to make them squirm and wiggle and pretty much flop in pain. Said he would usually do 30 to 50 of them before disemboweling them.
Good Lord.
Then he would usually lay on top of their body until he orgasmed.
Oh, gross.
They said that he became great at avoiding blood spurts. Yeah, he said that he became so well at cutting people's eyes out and pretty much disemboweling people that he could do it without getting bloody.
That is disgusting.
Yeah. He said that he would often lay beside the victims until their heart stopped beating.
Oh my God.
Adding that the victims' cries and blood gave him relaxation and a certain pleasure.
Ugh.
So when they questioned him on why he cut the victim's eyes out, he stated that he believed in an old superstition that the image of a murderer is left imprinted upon the eye of the victim.
What?
Yeah, he said that his image would be burned into the eye of the victim, so he had to cut the eyeballs out.
What did he do with them?
Nobody really knows. He ate some of them.
Blech. Oh my God.
I can't even imagine eating an eyeball. Like,
stop. We're not going to talk about that. That's disgusting, and I'm going to throw up. Oh my God.
You might want to mute your headset for this one then.
Oh my God.
You don't have earphones on. Oh, never mind. But the butcher said that he often tasted the blood of his victims and felt chills and shook all over when he tasted them. He admitted to tearing the victims' genitalia, lips, nipples, and tongues all out with his teeth. So he would just go at these bodies with his teeth, tearing them apart.
Nobody's going to listen to this episode, Wesley.
You don't think so?
I think everybody's going to stop halfway through.
Probably.
Oh my God.
Well, I mean, the baby killer got... I think that people want to know the details of the crimes.
I don't know.
You always hear people say that, they didn't give enough details.
I don't know.
They said that he would often, while he was laying on top of these people, disemboweling them, he would reach down with his mouth, like to kiss them and grab their tongue. So while he was disemboweling them, he was also ripping their tongue out of their mouth with his teeth.
No.
They said after he got the tongue out, he would hold the tongue in one hand and run around the body screaming.
Are you making that up?
No, it sounds crazy.
The way that you looked at me when you said that, I thought you were lying.
You're turning pretty pale. I thought you were about to puke.
I'm probably going to. This is disgusting. Oh, God.
We're almost through it.
Thank God for that.
He admitted that he had chewed on the uteruses of his female victims and the testicles of the male victims. To me, testicles just don't look like anything I'd ever want to chew on.
I mean, a uterus isn't either.
That's got to taste a lot like liver.
Oh God.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you?
He also confessed to swallowing the nipples and tongues of multiple victims.
Ugh. That's disgusting.
Yeah. So, on November 30th, he was formally charged with 34 counts of murder.
Jesus.
Which he confessed to all of them, so...
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
He confessed to everything.
And over the following days, he also confessed to 22 more.
Jesus.
That they didn't even connect to the case.
And they probably were just like, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's, like, we've got you. It's not a big deal.
After the police completed the interrogation and reenactments, he was transferred to the Moscow Institute of Psychology to undergo a 60-day evaluation. They determined that he was mentally competent to stand trial. He was analyzed by a senior psychologist that noted that he had various psychological problems that was attributed to prenatal brain damage, but concluded that even though he suffered from borderline personality disorder with sadistic features, he was fit to stand trial.
Good.
Yeah. He was brought to trial on April 92 and charged with 53 counts of murder, 5 accounts of sexual assault that he had done when he was a teacher.
Yeah.
This is the first trial since the press was free, so they were just going nuts.
Oh, I'm sure.
They said that the news media was just overwhelming. He had pretty much caused the whole country to just freak out. And on the first day of trial, he was kept in a cage in a courtroom. Like, they had the courtroom, and then there was a cage in the corner that they kept him in.
Holy crap.
And they had to encase the cage and wire because people kept throwing stuff at him. Trying to get at him.
I blame them.
Yeah. They said that he was constantly, under attack from hysterical relatives. It took 2 days of trial just to read the indictments against him.
Oh my God.
Because they had to lay out every single murder that he had committed. So 2 days just to read the names of the people that he admitted to killing.
That is absolutely nuts.
After reading 2 days worth of murders, the judge said, this is going to be an open trial. So at that point, he just let all the media in. He said, let this trial teach us something so this will never happen again, anywhere or anytime. The judge then asked him to stand and identify himself. Only thing he gave was his date of birth and his location. So, but after that, the judge and the butcher, they had a lot of kind of heated exchanges between each other. First they started questioning him about the detail of all the murders, and he really kind of got off on that still. He gave some replies, and he just dismissed a lot of it. They said when he was questioned on the specific nature of the wounds, he would really kind of perk up on that. He would only become angry when he was accused of stealing for some reason. And he got angry when they asked him what he did with the leftover organs. Which, I mean, I guess eating them's not a good enough answer.
Yeah. That's super weird.
And on a regular occurrence throughout the trial, the judge berated the butcher. And they say that the butcher was trying to act crazy. The judge constantly told him to shut his mouth, you're not crazy. Throughout the court courtroom, he was just going nuts. He exposed himself to the court. He would sing the national anthem. Twice during a trial, he pulled his pants down and shouted he was not a homosexual. He claimed to be pregnant and lactating. He just started yelling with all the boredom. They said that they'd often just have to take him back to his cell to have the court go on.
Holy crap.
So he was just... He said that the trial was nothing but a farce and would just ramble on.
Oh my God.
So I bet that was a spectacle.
Yeah.
First time they had TV in courtroom, they gave him a hell of a show.
Yeah.
The defense their only defense was they wanted another psych evaluation to prove that he was crazy. So
bull crap.
Yeah, just
because he's acting crazy, it just means he's bored and he wants to make you guys look like fools.
Yeah. The doctors testified that his behavior in the courtroom, a striking contrast to his courtroom in his cell. They consider his antics a calculated attempt to obtain acquittal on grounds of insanity. The defense gave a 90-minute closing argument, which is kind of short considering it took 2 days just to read his charges.
Yeah.
They said that he was only it was only took this far because of public outcry, and that there was just baseless allegations, which wasn't true. They had tons of evidence.
Oh, God, yeah.
He then asked the judge to find his client not guilty, which I guess you're probably required to do. There's a lot of stuff that happened in trial I don't understand, because I guess it's Russian court. It's kind of weird. The following day, prosecutors gave their closing arguments and talked about the testimony of the psychiatrist and his homicidal impulses, and that they had all this material evidence that connected him to at least 19 of the murders by themselves, and they formally requested the death penalty. The judge invited the butcher back into the courtroom to ask him if he wanted to speak, but he never said anything. He just sat mute. During that process, one of the victim's family threw a heavy piece of metal at him, hitting him in the chest.
Holy crap.
That kind of started a riot in the courtroom.
Of course.
Yeah, his security ended up trying to arrest him, but the other victims' relatives made that not happen. The court finally got back into session the next day, and he was found guilty on 52 of the 53 murders. And I read somewhere that they only tried him for 52 of the murders because they wanted to not try him for one in case something fell through so they could try him for the other one.
Yeah.
So, makes sense.
I feel like I've read somewhere that is a common thing, to not try them for all of them, like, fully, just in case something happens.
I could see that. Makes sense. That
just
way you
to make sure that they have the end result that they want.
Kind of like they did with Ted Bundy. They made sure that they tried him in Florida because they had the strongest evidence in Florida to convict him.
Yeah.
He was sentenced to death for each offense. He was also found guilty of the sexual assault. So he was sentenced to 52 counts of death plus 86 years in prison.
That's insane.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I guess at that point you realize that you're not going to ever get out if you get 52 death sentences.
Yeah.
The judge...
I mean, like, just in case you don't have to do it. For some, like, whatever reason, like, however you're killing people that day doesn't work out.
You got 52 more tries.
You have 51 more tries.
Yeah.
And then you still got those 80-something years.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
The judge, he kind of chewed the cops out during the trial, saying that they shouldn't have ever let him go in the first place, which they shouldn't. But if they would have caught him then, maybe it wouldn't have stuck and he would have got out anyway.
Yeah.
So.
I was just going to say, I kind of pictured, like, he goes down into hell and then Satan's like, hello, you have 86 years that you have to stay
Here's a pineapple.
in my special prison.
Yeah.
Good job. Sorry, I'm thinking of Stephen Lynch's Satan.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking of Little Nicky, where they...
I'm Satan.
Like Hitler every day gets a pineapple shoved up his butt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Are you serious? Yeah.
Sorry, we're weird. We've got to have some laughter during this crap show.
The judge said that due to the horrible misdeeds which he is guilty of, the court has no alternative but to impose the death sentence. They said when this happened, the butcher got up, kicked the bench across his cage, and began shouting at the judge.
Of course.
Yeah. But when the judge asked him if he wanted to make a speech, he just sat down and got quiet. And he was taken to the courtroom to the Russian prison that I'm not going to try to say, but it's Novosibirsk is what we're going to call it, to await execution. He put up an appeal, but the Russian Supreme Court said, "No, you're dead, dude." And then he asked the president.
Exact words.
Yeah. That's in Russian, too.
Oh. They said it in English just for us.
President Boris Yeltsin also said, "No, we're going to kill you."
He was like, denied.
So, on Valentine's Day, 1994, he was taken from his cell to a soundproof execution chamber and shot in the back of the head.
Yeah.
Kind of anticlimactic, though, for everything he did.
He deserved it.
They said that he was really weird, though. There's a movie about this, and I watched it. It wasn't that good, but they took him to this room, and there was this drain in the floor, and he just stared at this drain while they shot him. They said his last words, though, were, "Don't blow my brains out. The Japanese want to buy them."
What?
Yeah.
That is so strange.
He had convinced himself that the Japanese wanted to buy his brains.
Well, of course. Is he so special?
And that is the Butcher of Rostov. That's our first serial killer. I mean, we've done other killers.
If you made it this far, congratulations. I almost didn't, and I'm in the room with him.
In 10 more episodes, I'm going to do another serial killer, so...
Hopefully not that bad.
I really think people want the details, though.
Oh.
I guess we'll know by the views on this.
Yeah,
kind of like our baby killer.
Let us know how you feel about this. We need to know. It's important. It's important stuff, y'all.
Well, I've watched some TV shows and listened to some other podcasts and think, well, God, you don't learn all the details of the crime, so...
Not everybody's as fucked up as us, Wes.
That's true. But I think we'll find a group of people out there.
I mean, considering I just almost threw up, I'm not as fucked up as us.
You do look pretty pale, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. That was real bad.
But
and I was slightly familiar with this case and was not prepared for that.
Probably because I've been talking about it since the beginning. So
yeah,
I've pretty much researched this for longer than I should have. But
yeah,
go to tequilaandterror.com.
Thanks.